The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. Before making a health decision, please consult with a qualified medical professional. Thank you for your attention and enjoy today's episode. What is up, cooties and germs of the internet? My name is Tony and you're currently tuned into Hemp Nerd, the podcast, now officially the video podcast that helps clarify how medical cannabis works so you can get reliable therapeutic results. Now, in today's particular episode, we're going to be answering the question, does CBD oil work for gastritis? And if you are a regular listener of the past 9 episodes, I believe, that I've done so far, you know the process that we go through first is by first understanding the problem. So we're going to answer the question, what is gastritis? Once we understand the problem, then we'll dive into whether CBD oil can actually work for gastritis or not. So gastritis is a general term describing a group of conditions which have one thing in common. And that commonality in focus is the inflammation of the protective lining of your stomach. Gastritis is not only described as inflammation, but also the irritation and erosion of your protective stomach lining. All right. So gastritis appears in 3 forms, which are acute, chronic, and erosive. Now, acute gastritis is described as a sudden and severe inflammation. Chronic gastritis is described as gradual long-term inflammation that can last for many years if left untreated. And erosive gastritis is described as minimal inflammation compared to acute and chronic gastritis, but can lead to bleeding and ulcers in your stomach lining. Not pretty stuff. So what causes gastritis, okay? What makes it happen? What causes it? Gastritis is caused by any condition that weakens and or injures the mucus-lined barrier that protects your stomach wall. This allows your digestive juices to damage and inflame your stomach lining. A number of conditions can increase your risk of gastritis, including things like Crohn's and now this is where things get crazy for me, because obviously I did not study medicine, so all this material that I'm reading every week is like reading a new language, right? So diseases like Crohn's disease and sarcoidosis, I think that's how you pronounce that one. And Crohn's disease is a chronic inflammation bowel disease that affects the lining of your digestive tract, so in line with gastritis. And then sarcoidosis is the growth of tiny collections of inflammatory cells in different parts of your body, including your stomach lining. All right. So gastritis is also known to be caused by excessive use of alcohol. All right. So if you drink too much alcohol, there's a high risk of you obtaining or getting or developing gastritis, as well as cocaine, tobacco, stress, chronic vomiting, regular use of painkillers and NSAIDs, which are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. That's what NSAIDs are. So things like aspirin and ibuprofen. An infection by a bacteria that lives in the mucus lining of your stomach, called Helicobacter pylori, is also known to cause gastritis. All right, and a process known as bioreflux, where a backflow of your bile is pushed into your stomach from your bile tract, can also cause gastritis. Now, gastritis is also known to be caused by your own body attacking cells that make up your stomach lining. Okay, so it can also be autoimmune. This type of gastritis is called autoimmune gastritis. This negative reaction wears away at your stomach's protective barrier and is associated with vitamin B deficiency. So for all you vegans out there, make sure you're getting your vitamin B12, because that's what I was actually meant to say there. It's associated with vitamin B12 deficiency. So again, for all the vegan people out there, make sure you're getting B12, because if you're not getting B12, there's an association there that B12 deficiency can actually lead to gastritis. Autoimmune gastritis as well, not the pretty kind, the one where so autoimmune, for anyone who is watching or listening to this and doesn't know, an autoimmune disease is a disease where your immune system actually attacks healthy cells of your body. Okay, so in this case, autoimmune gastritis is where your immune system is actually attacking the protective layer of your stomach. So make sure you're getting that B12. Autoimmune gastritis is common among people with autoimmune disorders such as type 1 diabetes or Hashimoto's disease. But again, I don't know why vegans just came to mind. Maybe there's a lot of YouTube videos or Instagram accounts or blog posts talking about, B12 and how they have to supplement that and get it from another source because it's not as readily available in all the plants and vegetables and fruits and legumes that are around. Look, if left untreated, gastritis can lead to the development of stomach ulcers, severe blood loss as well, and an increased risk of developing stomach cancer. Now, what are the symptoms of gastritis? So gastritis doesn't always come with noticeable signs and symptoms. So it can be like hidden. I guess you can have it and you won't know that you have it. That's what I'm actually meant to say there. However, when you do get symptoms, they vary greatly from person to person. The most common symptoms include nausea, vomiting blood or coffee ground-like material, recurrent upset stomach, abdominal bloating or abdominal pain, indigestion, burning or a burning feeling in your stomach between meals at night, hiccups, loss of appetite, and black tarry stools. So it's not pretty when you do actually get symptoms, but for the most part, you wouldn't even know that you have it until maybe it's too late, who knows. But that's what I'm picking up from this research. So what are the current treatment options at the moment for gastritis? So we're getting into what we want to know. And of course, for anyone who is searching this topic, we want to know if CBD oil or cannabis in general actually does work for gastritis. But we're actually getting there because now we're going to look at what the current treatment options are. And from there, we're going to look and see whether CBD oil or cannabis in general can actually work for gastritis treatment. So for most people, gastritis isn't serious and improves quickly with treatment. All right, so that statement there makes me think that it's not a do or die situation when you do have gastritis, even if you do find out that you've got it a bit late because the symptoms were not that obvious at the beginning. Treatment will depend on the cause of the condition. If you have gastritis caused by painkillers, NSAIDs, alcohol, or other drugs, then avoiding these substances may be enough treatment, all right, to relieve your symptoms. Maybe enough. Avoiding irritating foods such as hot and spicy cuisines, for example, lactose from dairy, and gluten from wheat can help relieve symptoms. So again, this is kind of triggering the thoughts of vegans again, or plant-based food eaters, where they stay away from dairy, all right? And there's also the whole gluten movement. So there's people who stay away from gluten. So that in a way, whether you realize it or not, you're kind of preventing yourself from acquiring this condition called gastritis. However, again, I keep going back to that thought of the B12 deficiency. Make sure you're getting your B12 because just because you're eating plant-based isn't the be-all and end-all. You have to make sure you're also getting your other micronutrients as well, according to the research I've done for this. Now, if gastritis is caused by the bacteria, the H. pylori bacteria, then your doctor may treat you with antibiotics that kill this bacteria. Probiotics have been shown to help replenish digestive flora and heal gastric ulcers. That's the word I meant to say, gastric ulcers. However, there is no current guidelines that support the use of probiotics for ulcer management. And there's no evidence that probiotics have an impact on acid secretion. Now, with everything that I'm going through, okay, I'm not here to tell you, and this is a side note, I'm not here to say that everything that I've researched is written in gold, all right? This is not the gospel. I'm not, this is just my perspective, and this is what I've managed to find researching this topic. Just understanding the problem and understanding whether the solution that is CBD oil can work for it. However, if you do see some kind of study outside what I have mentioned that either supports or does not support what I'm saying, I'm happy to actually look at that, because I believe that if we can understand the truth together, then we'll be able to use cannabis as medicine more effectively or more efficiently. So I'm not here saying that everything I'm saying is absolutely true. There is room for error. I just don't know how big that error is, and the only way I'm going to find out is by putting myself out there in content like this, podcasts, video podcasts, blogging, and seeing what you the audience actually thinks, or what you believe, or what you know, what you found, or what you've seen to be true from elsewhere. And then from that, we can actually develop our understanding to a much stronger position than where we are right now. But here I'm kind of like setting the foundation. Okay, this is what I found. I'm obviously pro-cannabis, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. And I know there's a lot of people out there, lots of doctors as well, who are anti-cannabis. and they don't even want to look at the research, or they're just always looking for holes in any research that's being brought up, where I'm looking at the research to say that, look, this is what we have, so let's look at what we've discovered so far, and let's see if we can answer any questions we have right now with what we've discovered so far. And if there's any holes in the research that we're looking at, or in what we've discovered so far, then maybe we can fill those holes later. But if we don't look at what we have now, how can we fill those holes? How can we even identify that these holes that exist? I guess that's the beauty of being on a podcast. You can do things like that, and that's why I want to do it, because the more I research these things, the more I look into this industry, the more I seek to answer questions, the more my brain starts to wrap its head around how this stuff actually works. Back to the topic. So just in case, so here at the moment I'm saying that there's no evidence that probiotics have an impact on acid secretion. However, if you do find something that counters that, if you're watching this on YouTube, drop it in the description below. If you are listening to this on your favorite podcasting platform, email me at hempnerd.co@gmail.com. That's hempnerd.co@gmail.com. I'm obviously going to get a more professional email. Right now I'm just trying to build this thing that I'm building and answer as many questions as possible. Now, your doctor may recommend antacids for fast pain relief. Antacids neutralize your acid in your stomach. However, they also cause diarrhea or constipation. So you might have really runny stool, or you might not be able to poop at all. All right, so there you have it. Your doctor may also recommend medication known as proton pump inhibitors. They work by blocking cells that create stomach acid. However, long-term use, especially at high doses, can lead to an increased risk of spine, hip, and wrist fractures. They can also lead to an increased risk of renal failure, dementia, and nutrient deficiencies. Okay, so complications with existing medication has led people to ask the question, does CBD oil work for gastritis? I mean, this has happened multiple times with every single condition that I look at. When I also look at the current treatment options, I mean, if people were happy with the treatment options that exist in the market at the moment through big pharma or the pharmaceutical companies, then we wouldn't be looking for a better solution, right? We wouldn't be looking at cannabis or CBD oil as a potential treatment for these conditions, because we'd be happy with the results that we're getting. But the thing is, we're getting more harm than good with the current medication in the market, which is why a lot of people are wondering, can CBD oil actually work? And I'm wondering as well, because I don't want to be in a situation in the future where either myself or one of my family members needs this kind of medication, and for lack of understanding, because we're ignorant to the truth, we don't know, and then we just succumb to what's already being provided through the medical industry, and it's it's just not great. It's not working. It's actually causing more complications than fixing the actual problem. Hopefully, medical cannabis is the way forward. I personally believe it is the way forward. It's just about understanding how we can make it work. Okay, because its side effect profile is super amazing. That's another piece of content for the future. Otherwise, let us get into the juicy bit of today's content. Why you're all here, why you're watching this video. Does CBD oil work for gastritis treatment? Now, it is known in the medical community that cannabidiol, CBD, has potent anti-inflammatory effects. Gastritis is described as an inflammation of the protective lining of your stomach. Now, if you listen to my previous episodes of the Hemp Nerd podcast, from episode 1 to episode 9, because I believe this is episode 10, most of the conditions I've looked at are inflammatory in nature. All right, they have something to do, something gets inflamed somewhere in your body. All right, and CBD oil, for the most part, at this point in time, even the medical community knows, even those in denial, all right, even the doctors who are in denial know that it has potent anti-inflammatory effects. It has potent immunosuppressive effects, and it even suppresses autoimmune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis. So when I was doing my research to understand what gastritis is, in my mind I could already see that CBD oil is going to work. So I personally believe that CBD oil will work for gastritis treatment, especially for the inflammatory part. And even because of the characterization by the medical community saying that gastritis is the inflammation of your protective stomach lining, immediately my brain is going, CBD oil could work for that. Now, to support this perspective, of course, I like to look at any published journals or studies or clinical trials, or anything I can find that can actually support this perspective, because I'm pro-cannabis. So there's more than enough people who are anti-cannabis, you might as well be pro-cannabis in this already crazy world and this crazy year that we're living in called 2020. So there was a 2015 publication I found that documented studies that said to investigate the effect of cannabis sativa extract on gastric acid secretion, experimental gastric ulcers, and on experimental oxidative stress and inflammatory markers in the gastric mucosa of pylorus ligated rats. Cannabis was administered for 4 weeks daily prior to the pylorus ligation. Now, pylorus ligation is the surgical procedure of tying the pylorus tightly, and of course, you know, your pylorus is the valve between your stomach and the small intestine that opens and closes during digestion. So they were doing this in rats, and the study found that cannabis administered 1 month prior to pylorus ligation decreased the development of gastric mucosal damage in a dose-dependent manner. The study also found that there was a reduction in gastric acid output and gastric mucosal oxidative stress and inflammation. So these results indicate that cannabis administered systematically exerts gastric mucosal protective effects against mucosal damage. So the researchers concluded by stating that the effects of cannabis are likely to involve inhibition of gastric acid and pepsin secretion, increased mucus, decreased oxidative stress, and inflammation in gastric mucosa. So basically, cannabis in the rats, this is in rats, not in humans, but in the rats, has protective effects. A 2018 publication states that although rodent model studies demonstrate that cannabis hampers gastritis, human studies mirroring similar results are lacking. Thus, the researchers set out to investigate the impact of cannabis use on alcoholic gastritis among individuals with abusive alcohol use. And as we established at the beginning of this episode, excessive alcohol use is one of the lead causes of gastritis. Now, the researchers extracted hospital records of adults 18 years and older who were diagnosed with abusive alcohol use. The researchers used a tendency-based matching algorithm to match 30,738 groups of abusive cannabis users to an equal number of non-users. Then, using the regression models and equations, the researchers measured the relative risk of alcoholic gastritis with cannabis use and then with increasing levels of cannabis use. Take it, these people are just smoking joints that they're buying from the black market as opposed to CBD oil. You know, in my mind, I'm already thinking that, first of all, there's an uncertainty on the strains, so we don't know if they're smoking indica dominant or sativa dominant strains, but definitely they'll be smoking hybrids because that's pretty much what's out there at the moment. Majority of what you find are hybrid strains. We don't know what the ratios are, right? We don't know if it's and what the concentrations are. So the concentration levels of THC, concentration levels of CBD, we don't know what they are. If we use an 80-20 distribution, we don't know whether it's 80% THC, 20% CBD, or vice versa, 80% CBD, 20% THC. We don't know if they're smoking it as a joint, you know, bong, or they're baking it in their cakes. We have no idea. All right, the point I'm trying to make here is we have no idea how they're actually consuming it, but we do know that they are consuming it. Now, the results from the study revealed that cannabis co-use with alcohol decreased occurrence of alcoholic gastritis when compared to non-users of cannabis. All right, so I'll say that again. The results from the study revealed that cannabis co-use with alcohol, so people who are smoking weed and drinking alcohol, decreased the occurrence of alcoholic gastritis when compared to non-users. So people who are not smoking weed or people not taking cannabis, so just drinking alcohol versus people who are drinking alcohol and smoking weed. So the people who are drinking alcohol and smoking weed, there were less of them developing gastritis, where the people who were just drinking alcohol, more of them were developing gastritis. The researchers found that there was a 25% decreased probability of alcoholic gastritis in cannabis co-use. So according to that statement, if I understand this correctly, people who were smoking weed and drinking alcohol had a 25% less likelihood of developing alcoholic gastritis. Versus, obviously, and that's in comparison to people who are not taking cannabis or smoking weed, they're just drinking alcohol. They also found that there's a lower occurrence of alcoholic gastritis in cannabis-dependent users compared to non-dependent users and non-cannabis users, which is interesting. So people who smoke on the regular, and so keep in mind that everyone's drinking here, right? Everyone's drinking. So people who smoke on the regular, I don't know what regular means. Is it once a day? Is it once every 2 days? Is it 3 times a day? Is it once on the weekend? We don't know what that pattern or that frequency looks like. But with them being identified as dependent users, so they need cannabis in their life for one reason or the other, they had a lower likelihood, lower occurrence of developing alcoholic gastritis than people who are non-dependent cannabis users. So people who can smoke, but they don't smoke as frequently. They're like, maybe they smoke once a month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months, once every 6 months. They're just non-dependent users. They don't need cannabis in their lives, all right? And also compared to non-cannabis users. So people who don't even smoke at all. People are like, oh, cannabis is the devil's lettuce. I'm like, no, it's actually God's spinach. They had those two groups have a higher occurrence of developing alcoholic gastritis because the alcohol is just bad for you. It's that simple. They concluded the publication by stating that results demonstrate that when abusive alcohol users co-use cannabis, they were less likely to develop alcohol-associated gastritis, which we already know is one of the causes. With the rising popularity of cannabis use and cannabis-infused alcoholic beverages, that I didn't know about, but that would be interesting, more studies might reveal the optimal composition of the cannabinoid contents of these beverages to provide maximal protection from alcoholic gastritis, which is what I'm trying to drive home, not just with this piece of content, but with every piece of content moving forward. More investigation, right, into how actually cannabis works and what are the optimal levels for treating X or Y condition. All right, that's the point we need to get to, whereby we know what the optimal composition is for the cannabinoids, to whether you want to put it in a beverage, whether you want to have it as a vape, whether you want to have it as the oil, CBD oil, the one that is very popular at the moment that everyone's talking about, everyone wants, whatever else you want to infuse it into, your cakes, your muffins, your pasta, your burger, whatever you want to put it into, your butter, what those cannabinoid levels look like to treat. Now, you could have any condition, whether you're treating symptoms from, I don't know why the word cancer comes to mind, epilepsy, gastritis, tendinitis, polymyalgia, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, anxiety, depression, all these conditions. The way to look at it is, this is the way I look at it anyway, the cannabis plant is a pharmacy within itself. All right, it is literally, no joke, it is a pharmacy within itself. Like, I am still learning how powerful this plant is and how to use it to get results. Obviously, creating this content is my way of trying to figure that out. Let me see what people are interested in. Let me look at the research that supports the use of this plant. And then at some points, hopefully I'll meet people who know actually how to extract the pharmacology benefits of the plant, so we can start treating conditions with this plant properly, okay? As opposed to the drugs we have now that are causing more harm than good. So yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that statement right there. More studies might reveal the optimal composition of the cannabinoid contents of these beverages to provide maximal protection from alcoholic gastritis. And in a 2016 journal that reviewed the medical use of cannabis in gastroenterology for inflammatory bowel diseases, irritable bowel syndrome, and chronic pancreatitis, the authors state that there is a clear tendency for less abdominal pain and improved appetite with medical cannabis. Cannabis may be useful for symptom relief in Crohn's disease, such as pain, nausea, and loss of appetite. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So what are my final thoughts on this? Like, where do I land when it comes to does CBD oil work for gastritis? From going through all that, reading the blog, trying to record it on video, obviously capturing the audio as well for people who don't have time to sit down and watch me talk about what I'm talking about, I personally believe that CBD oil will work for gastritis. All right, one, because of all the research I've done so far anyway, the conditions I've been looking at have been inflammatory in nature. And when I looked at how CBD oil interacts with these inflammatory conditions or any inflammatory conditions, CBD oil is kicking butt, or CBD by itself, the cannabinoid CBD is actually kicking butt. And there's also the added benefit of the entourage effects of the other the entourage effect of the other cannabinoids coming into the picture to help. So with the research I've done on this particular topic, the publications and the journals and the experiment, I guess they were doing experiments to see what data they would find. Even though I could see there were some holes, even though those holes did exist, the results are the results. You know, I mean, people who smoke cannabis or smoke weed, we'll call it cannabis, let's be medical about this. People who smoke cannabis and drink alcohol have a 25% less likelihood of developing gastritis versus people who don't smoke cannabis and just drink alcohol. And then obviously the dependent users have a lower likelihood. The non-dependent users still have a lower likelihood than people who don't use cannabis at all of developing gastritis from alcohol abuse. Yeah, so it is my objective view at the moment that CBD oil will work. But I also believe that for this particular condition, you need to identify what's actually causing your gastritis. And what I'm not saying is if your gastritis is being caused by alcohol, just smoke weed and you'll be fine, or just take cannabis and you'll be fine. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm trying to help you understand is you need to identify first of all what is causing your gastritis, and if it is your drinking habits, then maybe you need to review that. You need to scale it back. And with gastritis, it seemed that could, from right at the beginning of this episode, that could alleviate symptoms, right? That's what I'm trying to say here. That could actually alleviate symptoms just by reducing, if it is caused by alcohol, if it is caused by hot and spicy cuisines, if it is caused by lactose from dairy, if it is being caused by gluten, those type of things, because that's your stomach. We're talking about your stomach here at the end of the day. So if that's the cause, before you even jump into CBD oil, and then just take cannabis and it'll be great. I would say look at your drinking and eating habits, go through a process of elimination, of removing those things and seeing how that affects your stomach and affects you. And then from there, if you've noticed improvement, you don't even need to touch cannabis. You don't even need to touch CBD oil, because maybe you've been drinking too much, maybe you've been eating too much spicy food, maybe dairy doesn't work well with you, maybe gluten doesn't work well with you. Okay, but then maybe if your gastritis is caused by something else other than those things, which was like the bacteria in your stomach and bioreflux as well, maybe then you can look into CBD oil, because we saw that in the rats, the cannabis actually reduced acid secretion, okay, and it also basically had a protective effect on your stomach lining. All right, so if it is caused by things that are outside your eating and drinking habits, some complications going on within your stomach from a bacteria, maybe from bioreflux, then maybe I would say, okay, maybe look into it. Obviously consult a pro cannabis medical professional, because I'm not one, but that is a situation where I would see myself actually using CBD oil, where it's not coming from my personal habits, it's actually coming from some kind of complication within my own digestive system. That's what I would look in. That's when I would actually look into it, and I would actually go out of my way to find a pro cannabis doctor to work with. Look, there are a lot of medical professionals out there who are not pro cannabis for whatever the reason may be. I'm not here to judge, but there are also some medical professionals out there who are pro cannabis, and that is my number one recommendation, because you do not want to make health decisions and then make a mistake in dealing with your health conditions. Just because you watched some guy on YouTube say that cannabis will work, or CBD oil will work for gastritis, or you heard it on a podcast, and then the worst happens. We don't want that. So if you are targeting inflammatory issues, or if you want anti-inflammatory effects, right? Let's say you've spoken with a pro cannabis doctor, the doctor's giving you the thumbs up, and let's say you have to go out, they don't have it in his or her clinic, you have to actually go out into the market and find CBD. What type of CBD oil product would you be looking for? Specifically because we're going for anti-inflammatory effects. So there's two that I would recommend. All right, if you're looking into this, the first one is a full spectrum product. Full spectrum, but if you don't know, basically means it has the entire spectrum of cannabinoids, including THC. However, with the legal regulations surrounding THC at the moment across the world, there's not enough THC to give you any kind of high or psychoactive effect. In the US, it's less than 0.3%. In Europe, it's less than 0.2% THC that is legally allowed in a CBD product or in a cannabis-based product. So that is what you'll be getting in a full spectrum product. It would be less than 0.2 or 0.3% THC, and for you to actually get a high, you need about minimum about 7% THC. I personally believe, to then feel some kind of high. All right, but the main thing we're going for here is CBD, because then you're going to have an abundance of CBD in a full spectrum product, and you're going to also have the other cannabinoids that do come with it. So you're going to benefit from the entourage effect, the terpenoids as well, and that's a full spectrum product. The other one is a broad spectrum product. So you've got full spectrum and then you've got broad spectrum. Broad spectrum is one that has all the cannabinoids except THC. All right, so they've cleaned out THC, like there's absolutely no THC in that product, but you've got CBD, I think it's CBN, and I think the mother cannabinoid CBG, if I remember correctly, or if my memory serves me correctly. But you're going to get every other cannabinoid. So you're still going to get an entourage effect. You're still going to get CBD, which is the key cannabinoid here, whether you're going full spectrum or broad spectrum, because CBD has been shown, and you can check this out on my blog, on my website, HempNerd.co. Every single condition that has had an inflammatory cause or is inflammatory in nature, CBD has potent anti-inflammatory effects, and you'll be able to read that with all my previous blog posts where the conditions I've been looking at, whether it's your joints, whether it is in your blood with polymyalgia. CBD has shown to have potent anti-inflammatory effects with a very beautiful looking side effect profile as well, which I'm going to dive into in a future piece of content. But for now, that's what I would be looking for. If you've got pain, then it's going to be hard to find one, unless maybe you can get one through your medical professional. Maybe they are the ones who are allowed to sell this type of CBD product. But basically a full spectrum product with a 1-to-1 ratio of THC and CBD. I don't personally believe that you can find that in any online store anywhere on the internet at the moment, and maybe if you go to the dark web or something like that. But for anyone who's trying to grow a legitimate CBD oil business, like selling product, they're not going to have a 1-to-1 ratio of THC and CBD unless they've jumped through so much red tape with their government and what have you to be able to sell it. So I don't believe you find one. I haven't seen one yet. I've been looking, I've been searching to see if I can actually find one. I haven't been able to find one yet, and that's because of the legal regulation around THC at the moment. Now, I highly recommend, right, because I'm not a medical professional, again, I'll keep repeating this until I don't have to anymore, but I highly recommend that you find a pro-cannabis doctor that you can work with, because they're going to be able to use you as a case study. And then who knows, that case study can be used, your case study will add to, hopefully they have a growing list of case studies to then push the case that cannabis can become the mainstay in the medical industry, and people can use it to help with whatever conditions, and we can understand it better, and we can just live happier, healthier lives because of it. Otherwise, look, that is pretty much it for this episode of the Hemp Nerd podcast. This is a bit of a different episode because now I have gone all in on making it a video podcast. So this is going to be like one of the weakest episodes that I have done. But hopefully it's provided you some level of value. Hopefully it helped answer questions that you have in your mind. And if there's anyone right now who's watching this video or listening to this audio and you actually live in Australia, I'm actually now working with a Swiss company called Formula Swiss to actually provide CBD oil to people who are in the market for it in Australia. And I have a link. If you're watching this on YouTube, there is a link in my description that will send you directly to my Amazon listings, because that's where I'm able to sell them at the moment, or to list them for sale at the moment, so I can work with Formula Swiss. I'm also working on building a shopping presence or a shopping experience within HempNerd.co. That's still in development, but for the moment I'm leveraging Amazon until I cannot leverage it anymore to actually get as much product out. So if you live in Australia and you want to get your hands on some CBD oil, whether it's for yourself or for one of your family members or for your pet, head over to HempNerd.co/Amazon AU. That's HempNerd.co/Amazon AU, and that will take you straight to my current Amazon Australia listings with CBD oil from Formula Swiss, all ranging from 300 milligrams to 2500 milligrams, depending on the level of concentration. At the moment, we have two carrier oils. One is with hemp seed oil, the other one is with olive oil. I'm working on getting some MCT oil listings up there as well. I'm working on getting some bundles up there as well. But for the most part, I'm trusting that you have spoken with a medical cannabis professional, a pro cannabis medical professional, to the point whereby he or she has recommended that or sees that CBD oil is a good fit to treat your condition. And I'm trusting that you've gone through that process to be able to then offer these products and make sure you get them so they can help you with whatever condition you're dealing with, especially if your condition is inflammatory in nature. I know these products are going to work. So that is it for today's episode. Oh, and I know there's a lot of people in the US listening to this or watching this as well, because I've seen my channel analytics and my podcast analytics, and the two big countries are the US and Australia. With the US, I have applied to have a US Amazon selling account. I'm still waiting for that to come through. But in the meantime, as that's happening, I'm still developing my shopping experience inside HempNerd.co, so I don't have to rely on Amazon to make sales, and I don't have to rely on Amazon to actually help you. So I'm waiting for that to come through. If that comes through, I was hoping it would come through within the week. It hasn't come through yet, and I don't want to stop myself from offering what I have available to the public, because I know there is a demand for product. Yes, there is a demand for information, which is why I'm doing this, but I also know that there is a demand for product. Otherwise, if you want to check out the studies that I referenced in this episode, just go to HempNerd.co. The most recently published piece of content is this episode, does CBD oil work for gastritis? Or if you want, you can just go HempNerd.co/CBD-oil-gastritis, and it'll take you straight to the blog post. But if you just go to HempNerd.co, it's still a fresh website. There's only like 10 pieces of content, so you're gonna find it's gonna be very easy. It's be like the most recent one, unless you're watching this or listening to this sometime in the future, like many years in the future. Then yes, HempNerd.co/CBD-oil-gastritis. Otherwise, take care, God bless, stay healthy, and I'll catch you in the next episode of the Hemp Nerd podcast. Peace.